My beloved child, listen closely, because what you're about to hear is the confession she never wanted you to know, one she whispered in a trembling voice when she thought no one was watching. It began on a night so silent that even shadows felt frozen. She was pacing in a room that didn't belong to her, clutching something in her hands as if it had the power to destroy everything. And when she finally spoke, her words cracked like breaking glass. She said she was terrified. Terrified of the truth. Terrified of you finding out what she had hidden. And terrified of the moment her mask slipped and showed what really lived underneath. She didn't know a recorder was running. She didn't know her voice would reach you. But now it will. Because every pause, every shaky breath, every unfinished sentence she left hanging in the air carries a story that has been tightening around her like a rope she can't untie. And in the corner of that dimly lit room, she kept repeating one line, over and over, as if trying to convince herself it wasn't too late, if they ever discover this. I will lose everything. That's where her fear began, but not where it ends. Because what she confessed next is the reason your world is about to twist in a way you never saw coming. She admitted that the smile she wore around you was never real. Not entirely. She said it felt like wearing someone else's face, someone stronger, someone braver, because the truth underneath terrified her more than anything. She said she kept pretending everything was fine, pretending she wasn't breaking apart from the pressure of holding secrets that felt heavier each day. But the moment she mentioned your name, her voice dropped to a whisper so thin it sounded like it could disappear into the darkness. They don't know what I did, they don't know what I almost said. If they ever heard this, they would walk away without looking back. Those words didn't sound like guilt. They sounded like regret soaked in fear. As if there was a turning point, one tiny moment, where she could have told you the truth, but didn't. And that mistake has been haunting her ever since. She confessed that every time you showed trust, it stabbed her a little deeper because she knew she wasn't being honest with you. And the worst part? She said she replayed your last conversation in her mind 1,000 times, wondering if you sensed something off. Wondering if you noticed her trembling hands. Wondering if you caught the flicker in her eyes that she tried so hard to hide. She said she didn't know how much longer she could carry the lie. And then she said something that changed everything. If they discover the real reason I pulled away, they'll never forgive me. But what she confessed after that is the real storm. Because in the end, she revealed the one truth she feared the most, something she buried so deep she hoped it would never escape. She said she wasn't running from you, she was running from what she felt. She said every moment around you made her heart panic, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right. You made her feel safe, and that scared her more than anything. She wasn't ready for that kind of closeness, that kind of honesty, that kind of vulnerability. So instead of stepping closer, she stepped away. She confessed she kept a secret not because she wanted to deceive you, but because she was terrified of losing herself in a feeling she wasn't prepared for. And that's why she's afraid now, because she knows the truth is coming to you, even though she didn't intend for it to leak. She knows her confession is no longer hidden. She knows her voice will reach you. And she knows that once you hear everything, once you realize how deeply she felt and how desperately she tried to suppress it, your reaction will determine everything. Will the truth set her free, or break everything beyond repair? She doesn't know. But now, you're about to decide. When the lights went out in her room that night, she thought the darkness would hide her fear, but it only exposed what she had been running from. Her voice trembled as she continued confessing, unaware that every word was being captured. She said she never meant for things to spiral, never meant for the truth to grow so big it started breathing on its own. She admitted she had rehearsed dozens of explanations, dozens of ways to finally sit in front of you and reveal everything. But every time she pictured your eyes, steady, searching, unshaken, her courage collapsed. She felt small. She felt undeserving. She said you were the one person who deserved honesty, yet you were the one person she couldn't bring herself to face. And that contradiction tore her apart. She whispered that she feared not your anger, but your silence, because losing your voice would feel like losing the ground beneath her feet. And the moment she said that, her confession shifted. It wasn't just about what she hid. It was about why it mattered so much. She said your presence had become the one thing she never meant to rely on, but did. And she was terrified of you discovering that truth, terrified you'd think she was weak. But weakness wasn't the problem. It was attachment. And she knew once she admitted that, everything would change. Then she said something that made even the quiet feel heavy. She confessed that the moment she realized how much she depended on you, she ran. Not because she wanted distance, but because she didn't know how to hold something that felt so fragile, so rare, so dangerously real. She said she wished you could step inside her mind for even 1 second, just to feel how violently her heart reacted every time she heard your name. She said it scared her how much she cared, how much she waited for you to notice the things she couldn't say out loud. And then, in a voice cracked with guilt, she admitted she pushed you away, not to hurt you, but to protect the one thing she feared losing the most, you. She thought distance would calm her emotions, but instead, it magnified them. She said she watched your messages, your reactions, your silence, and every moment felt like a countdown she wasn't ready for. She said she wanted you to stay, yet she was terrified of being someone worth staying for. That tug-of-war inside her became the secret she couldn't hide anymore. And when she said the next line, her breath hitched like she was breaking. If they ever learn how much I actually loved them, they'll look at me differently. That wasn't fear of judgment. That was fear of being seen. Before her confession ended, she revealed the moment everything changed, the moment she realized she couldn't run forever. She said it happened when she saw the expression on your face, a look you didn't even know you gave. A look that told her you noticed her distance. That you felt something shifting. That you sensed the truth she wasn't ready to speak. And in that moment, she panicked. She said she didn't know whether to reach out or disappear entirely. She didn't know if you were silently waiting or silently breaking. But she did know one thing: hiding the truth was no longer possible. And now that her confession is reaching you, now that her fear has been exposed, there's one thing she needs, even if she'll never say it herself. She needs clarity. She needs direction. She needs to know whether the truth that terrified her is the truth that will bring her closer to you or push her further away. If this moment made you feel something, if even a tiny part of you wants the next layer of her confession, then keep listening. Because the next part, she whispered, changes everything. Before dawn touched her window, she finally broke the silence that had been choking her for months. Her voice was low, unsteady, as if every word carried the weight of a truth she wished she could run from. She said she didn't just hide her feelings, she hid the moment that started it all. A moment she replayed so many times that it became more real than the present. She said it happened on an ordinary day, no drama, no warnings, nothing unusual. You said something so simple, so casual, yet it hit her like a truth she wasn't prepared to face. You spoke with honesty, with warmth, with a sincerity she didn't think anyone still carried. And that moment, that single moment, made her realize she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She said she felt something shift inside her, something quiet but undeniable. Something that made her heart race in ways she couldn't control. And that shift terrified her more than any secret she ever kept. Because she knew exactly what it meant. And she knew you didn't. She whispered that she wanted to freeze time right there, hold on to that one moment where everything felt simple. Before emotions complicated everything, before fear took over, before she convinced herself she wasn't worthy of what she felt. But she couldn't freeze it. And that's when her fear truly began. She said the more she tried to hide her feelings, the louder they became. Every message from you felt like a spark she tried to smother, but the fire kept growing. She said she reread your words at night, trying to decode meanings you never intended, trying to understand why your presence made her heart behave like it didn't belong to her anymore. She said she noticed details others would ignore, the softness in your tone, the pauses between your thoughts, the way you said her name without realizing its impact. She said she felt seen by you in a way she hadn't felt in years. And that scared her more than anything. Because she wasn't prepared for someone to reach the parts of her she kept locked away. She confessed that every time she acted distant, she wasn't pushing you away, she was fighting the urge to get closer. She said she wanted to step into your world, to trust the connection she felt, but her past made her doubt everything good. And that doubt became the shadow behind her every action. She said she feared if she opened up fully, you'd finally see the parts of her she tried to hide. The parts she wasn't proud of. The parts that made her think she wasn't enough. And she believed that if you saw her truth, you might walk away. That fear, real, raw, consuming, is what kept her silent. Then her voice cracked when she revealed the most painful part of her confession. She said she wasn't terrified because she didn't trust you, she was terrified because she trusted you too much. More than she intended. More than she allowed herself to. She said your presence felt like safety, like belonging, like something she had been searching for without knowing it. And the thought of losing it, losing you, felt like a risk too big to take. So she chose the illusion of control over the reality of vulnerability. She hid her feelings. She hid her fear. She hid the truth. But she admitted one thing with absolute certainty: hiding didn't protect her. It only made her feelings stronger. And now that her confession is out in the open, now that the truth has escaped the walls she built, there's no going back. She said that if you're hearing this, if this truth is reaching you, then it means the moment she feared the most has finally arrived. The truth she buried is no longer silent. The question now is simple, but powerful. Will you let the next part unfold, or will this be where her story ends? In the quiet hour before the world wakes, she finally reached the part of her confession she feared the most. The part she tried to bury so deep it almost disappeared. She said there was a moment, recently, when she saw something in your eyes that shook her. Not anger. Not disappointment. Something far more dangerous, recognition. As if you sensed the truth she had been hiding, as if you felt the shift in her the same way she felt it in you. She said that look from you made her heart lurch because it confirmed what she had been denying for so long. You were not as unaware as she hoped. You noticed her silence. You sensed her withdrawal. You picked up the pieces of the truth she kept dropping without realizing it. And when that realization hit her, she panicked. She didn't know whether you were waiting for her to speak, or simply watching the distance grow. She said she replayed your expression over and over, searching for clues. Were you hurt? Were you confused? Were you expecting something from her? And the more she thought about it, the louder her guilt became. Because she knew your patience wasn't infinite. And she feared she had already stretched it too thin. She confessed that the last time you spoke, she noticed something she pretended not to see. Your words were calm, your tone steady, but there was a weight behind them. A quiet heaviness. As if you were holding back your own truth. As if you wanted to say something you didn't. And that terrified her even more. She said she felt like she was standing on the edge of a moment that could change everything between you. One honest sentence from either side, and everything would shift. She said she almost told you then, on that day, in that moment. She almost broke the walls she spent years building. Her heart was pounding, her thoughts were racing, and for a split second, she felt ready to reveal everything. But when you looked at her with that calm patience of yours, she froze. Not because she didn't want to be honest, but because she was afraid of what honesty might cost her. She feared the truth would break the fragile connection she had with you. That once her feelings were exposed, you might step back, unable to meet her where she stood. And that fear is what held her back. That fear is what pushed her to distance herself before the truth pushed you. And then she revealed the secret she never wanted to say out loud. She said the reason she's terrified now isn't just because the truth is coming out, but because she knows what she stands to lose if it changes the way you see her. She said you become someone she thinks about without meaning to, someone whose presence feels like home even in silence. She said your absence feels louder than most people's words. And that realization, raw, intense, overwhelming, is what truly frightened her. Because she wasn't supposed to care this much. She wasn't supposed to feel this deeply. She wasn't supposed to be afraid of losing something she never officially had. But she is. And now that her confession has slipped beyond her control, now that her voice, her fear, her truth are reaching you, she said there's only one thing she needs, even if she'll never say it directly. She needs to know whether the truth will pull you closer, or whether it's the moment you finally step away. Because the next part of her confession, the one she whispered last, is the one she feared the most. And once you hear it, nothing will ever return to the silence it came from. Somewhere between her final breath and her breaking point, she admitted the truth she spent the longest time denying, the truth she knew would shatter the silence more violently than anything that came before. She said there was a night when she almost reached out to you. Not out of panic. Not out of confusion. But because she couldn't bear the weight of her own emotions anymore. She typed a message, erased it, typed it again, erased it once more. Her hands were shaking, her heart was thundering, and every word felt too small to capture what she truly wanted to say. She confessed she stared at your name on the screen for so long that minutes turned into hours. She wished you could sense her hesitation. She wished you could read the truth hiding between her pauses. She wished you could somehow understand that her silence wasn't indifference, it was fear dressed as restraint. And when she finally gathered the courage to speak, one thought stopped her, a thought so sudden, so sharp, that it silenced every brave intention she had. What if they don't feel the same? That question crushed her. Because the possibility of losing what little she had with you felt more unbearable than the pain of hiding her truth. She said there were moments when she convinced herself you didn't care. Moments when she misread your distance as disinterest. Moments when she thought you were slipping away, not because of her silence, but because you genuinely didn't feel what she felt. And each time she believed that, a piece of her fell apart quietly, without drama, without noise, just a soft breaking she didn't know how to stop. But then she would remember the way you spoke to her, the warmth in your tone, the steadiness in your presence, and everything inside her would contradict itself. She said she began to notice things she tried to ignore, the way your words shifted subtly, the way your silences carried meaning, the way you seemed to understand her even when she wasn't speaking clearly. She said it felt like you knew more than you admitted, like you saw through her carefully crafted distance. And that terrified her. Because if you could read her that easily, then you must have known how deeply she felt. She said she feared your awareness more than your ignorance. Because if you knew, and still didn't act, what did that mean? Did it mean you were waiting? Did it mean you were unsure? Or did it mean you were choosing to stay silent because you didn't feel the same way? That unanswered question has been haunting her more than the confession itself. And then she finally revealed the truth she had been trembling to say, the truth that made her voice almost disappear into the dark. She said she didn't just care for you. She didn't just admire you. She didn't just get attached. She said she fell for you in a way she never expected. Quietly. Slowly. Completely. She said every part of her fear wasn't about her secret coming out, it was about the possibility of losing you once you heard it. She said the thought of you pulling away, even slightly, felt like a future she couldn't bear to imagine. Because her feelings weren't temporary. They weren't impulsive. They weren't uncertain. They were the kind of feelings that replaced her heartbeat with your name. And she knew that once she admitted this, once her confession reached you, there would be no return to the comfortable distance she used as protection. She said this truth is the one thing she can't take back, can't silence, can't hide anymore. And now that it's in your hands, now that you know what she never dared to say, the next move isn't hers. It's yours. She said the next part of her confession, the final, raw, unfiltered truth, depends entirely on what you choose to feel in this moment. Because the next words she whispered, only matter if you're ready to hear the rest. As the night thinned into a fragile gray, she reached the point she had been avoiding since the moment her feelings began, her final truth, the one she hid behind every excuse, every pause, every carefully crafted silence. She said there was a reason her fear felt so overwhelming, a reason her confession sounded like a storm she couldn't contain. It wasn't just because she fell for you, it was because she fell at a time when she wasn't supposed to. She said she wasn't ready emotionally, mentally, or even situationally. Life had left her bruised in ways she never admitted. Trust was a wound she carried quietly. And loving someone again, especially someone who made her feel more than she intended, felt like stepping barefoot into a fire she wasn't sure she could survive. She said she pushed you away not because she didn't want you close, but because the closeness felt too pure, too gentle, too real. It scared her how effortlessly you calmed the parts of her she could never soothe herself. It scared her how safe your presence felt in a world that rarely gave her safety. It scared her how quickly her heart rewrote its rhythm to match yours. That fear, pure, raw, uncontrollable, is what forced her into silence. She wasn't running from you. She was running from the person she became around you, someone vulnerable enough to be hurt again. She said that the day you stopped asking too many questions, the day you matched her distance with silence of your own, something inside her cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet ache that lingered long after the moment passed. She said she realized then that your patience wasn't infinite. She realized she had mistaken your calmness for certainty when maybe, you were confused too. Maybe you were waiting for a sign. Maybe you were hoping she'd stop hiding. Maybe you were hurting silently, wondering why she pulled back when all you ever gave her was honesty. And that idea, of you being silently hurt because of her fear, shook her more than any confession she made. She said she started noticing little things. Your tone becoming softer, your replies carrying an unspoken question, your pauses feeling heavier than before. She said she could feel your heart trying to understand hers, even if neither of you dared to say the truth out loud. And in that delicate space between your silence and hers, she realized something she had been too scared to accept: she wasn't the only one feeling something. She said she felt your emotions even when you didn't name them. She felt the shift in your energy. She felt the difference in the way you spoke to her versus the world. She felt the quiet, the intensity, the uncertainty, mirroring her own. But instead of finding courage in that, she felt pressure. Pressure to say something before she lost the moment forever. Pressure to be brave when her heart still trembled. Pressure to not ruin something she barely had the strength to admit she wanted. And then, she revealed the final piece of her truth. The one she whispered so softly it sounded like a confession she hoped the world would never hear. She said she wasn't terrified because of uncertainty, she was terrified because somewhere deep inside, she believed you might actually feel the same. And that possibility, beautiful, overwhelming, life-changing, felt like the biggest risk she had ever faced. She said she didn't know what would happen once you learned everything. She didn't know if you'd step closer, offer clarity, or quietly pull away to protect yourself. She didn't know if her words would heal something, or break what little she had left of you. But she did know one thing with absolute clarity: her feelings are real. Unedited. Unfiltered. Unmistakable. And now that her confession has reached you, now that every hidden truth, every trembling fear, every unspoken hope is finally in your hands, she said there is only one thing she quietly wishes for. Not reassurance, not promises, not certainty. Just honesty. She wants to know if her truth changed anything in your heart. If anything she whispered echoed something you've been holding inside yourself. Because the next part of this story, the one beyond fear, beyond silence, beyond hiding, can only begin if you choose to hear her final words. And those words, the ones she saved for last, are waiting for your signal to unfold.